Jamie Dimon's appearance on Capitol Hill this week sort of reinvigorated the debate about too big to fail and whether or not the biggest U.S. banks, the strategically significant ones, can be wound down, whether or not there's a living will in place to make that happen, whether there's already a process that's been built up within the FDIC. Anthony, you took a view on this recently. Talk to me a little bit about where you come down. Are we ready to let go of too big to fail?
Well, I think the big takeaway at the moment is we still don't know. The FDIC has come up with a few ideas of late to say, look, we've got our hands around this process. We were given the authority to wind down non-banks and very large banks which have non-banks, say Citigroup is a big investment bank, or Goldman Sachs, or whatever. And they've come up with some decent ideas, none of which are particularly new. So the biggest one is we will use the debt in the bank and transfer it to equity to make sure it's well capitalized in the event of failure. That came out
that's
during
sort of the bail-in concept, which is wipe out equity investors, use the existing debt to reconstruct them.
Clearly your view on this is skeptical, and we won't know until we know. So in some ways it's right to be skeptical. We've had some feedback from a banker who's steeped in this stuff, sort of saying actually he thinks this is the the best kept secret of the financial reforms, that actually there is now a process, this FDIC process in the US. The US could handle a much bigger bank than, say, Bankia in Spain, which caused so much trouble and needed another bailout.
I mean, the good thing about Bankia from America's perspective is that America doesn't have a bank that's that large a part of the economy. I mean,
but it has banks that are bigger.
Bankia is a smaller bank, but a bigger part of the
so
economy.
Bankia is like 350 billion of assets or so, which is equivalent to the size of, say, US Bancorp. And the FDIC could probably take US Bancorp. It'd be a struggle. It's a big bank. Don't get me wrong.
But consider JP Morgan. I mean, what this banker is saying to us is actually he thinks FDIC could do that.
I think despite my skepticism, I think the FDIC actually does have a good handle on how to close down a bank, and what it didn't have in the crisis was any authority to do this.
Right, it does.
No one had any authority. So now it's got the authority, it's got some of the tools in place to do that, and it's developing. The living wills will probably help as well. This idea that the banks say
the question is whether or not people are aware that the FDIC has this authority, that there's a plan. I mean, I think the point that he's making, and some other people supporting this idea, is that that Lehman weekend, there was no blueprint whatsoever. And there's actually a workable blueprint right now.
Right, exactly.
And where that
and it's
not, the living wills, which is the blueprints that the banks have to draw up themselves, may not be the best option. Actually, what we've already got is the better way to go.
And the idea is that what you do is you take this bank, and people think, oh God, it's so complicated, it's all over the world. But his point is that what the FDIC is supposedly can now do is basically take that bank, put it in a new business, newly capitalize it. So you get rid of if the problem is
all depositors are okay.
Depositors are okay, the business continues, everything continues.
The contracts are fine, and also, of course, you don't have any problems at all with having to liquidate anything overnight. There's no, let's get everyone around to sort out our credit derivative swaps with the rest of the street. Because you use that debt to recapitalize the bank, and it should be able to continue. Now, the issues there are twofold, really. Firstly, you've got to assume that competitors are going to allow that to happen without suddenly thinking, there's a dead fish in the water, let's all gather around it. And secondly, you want to make sure this thing can survive longer term, whether it means new management or whatever. Of course, the bigger issue beyond that is, are we going to see one of these firms fail on its own? If there's a big crisis, the chances of one of these strategic
I still think that's the biggest question mark over all this, and the reason why skepticism is the right course is because if it's so unlikely to be one, what we always find is you think it's just Bear Stearns, and then it turns out to be Lehman and everybody else.
Let's leave it there. Let's definitely hope that this is all an academic discussion and that we won't have any massive banks failing. In any event, we'll be back with more Breaking Views next week.